Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Simon here with AvaTrade, and I want to welcome you again to our weekly trading plan. I'm sorry. And for those of you who are new for it, the idea of it came out a few months ago, and I started doing it, and I think it's a great help, judging by the feedback. Basically, what it does, it creates for us a structure, a direction, some guidance, some ideas for the upcoming week. So before we go any further, I'd just like to read to everyone the risk warning, which is important. And capital markets and trading information disclosed in this webinar is provided for informative purposes only and should not be construed or applied as investment advice, a recommendation, or suggestions. CFDs are complex instruments and come with the high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 71% of retail investor accounts lose money when trading CFDs with this provider. You should consider whether you understand how CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. And you can find a full disclosure statement at our website, avatrade.com. And let's just go through this really quickly. Of course, you can follow up with us on Twitter at AvaTrade, and YouTube is a huge source of very practical information, including the tutorials on trading and platforms. You have fundamental analysis videos, technical analysis videos, and the webinars are being posted there as well, including this webinar, of course. And usually the agenda is the same. We going through different groups of instruments that includes indices, forex pairs, commodities, and some stocks. And basically, that's it. And just to go back of the structure of this and the reason why we're doing this, it just it can be in one phrase that I keep on saying every week: you plan your trade, and then you trade your plan. Because without it, market is as it is. It's a place it's easy to get lost. And if we don't have a plan, if you don't have any structure, understanding what's happening, that it can become very chaotic, and we can easily get lost and do things that were not planned, and that normally doesn't lead to great results. And of course, following your plan doesn't guarantee the results, but at least every trader should have a plan and try to stick to it, and that kind of creates direction and creates organized way of trading. Okay, so let's move on, and I would like to start with general things, and this is the structure. Basically, where we go over a few fundamental things and in general what's happening in the world, because as we know, these days everything is being affected by everything, and it's all global economy, and everything is relating to something else. And then we'll go through major events coming out on economic calendar, and then we'll follow up with the trading platform MT4, and then we'll go through specific instruments, and that's pretty much as the structure. So few things. This is the reason I have this slide on the screen, is the Thanksgiving week in the States. As we know, the US economy is the biggest, and whatever's happening there is affecting everything else. And this week we have a Thanksgiving week, which means few things. On a simple level, Thursday is the US financial markets are closed, and Friday they'll work in a short setting. I think the market will close, the stock market will close at 1 p.m. instead of 4, and I think futures will be closing at 2 o'clock on Friday. So it's going to be kind of a short week, but it's not the reason why I set up this slide. I found this investment firm called Bespoke. Basically, they're trying to bring up the statistics, what to expect as far as the moves on the market and they made the statistics since 1945, and they made it by day. So just in general, this week, normally statistically, if you take it from 1945, the the indices or the equity markets are going up about 0.6%, and in the past 20 years, about a percent, 0.87. And they broke it down into the days. So Monday, it was actually negative if you take average since 1945, and the past 20 years, 0.5% on Monday. So the week started strong. Then Tuesday was a down day according to the past 20 years average, and a little bit higher if you take since 1945. And Wednesday was the most positive day in both statistics. And then Thursday, there's no trading, as you could see. And then Friday was also a little bit of a plus, and that comes out to the total for the week. Again, the past 20 years, 0.87%, and since 1945, 0.6. So Thanksgiving also is followed by Friday, the Black Friday, which is the retail sales. It's a lot of excitement there. And of course, then they come up with the numbers on that Black Friday, and they usually compare it year by year. So it's going to be interesting. As it is a shorter week, as we know, European markets are going to be open on Thursday and Friday normally, but as US is closed, the bonds are going to be closed on Thursday. So it's going to be kind of not really a fully loaded market, so to speak. So as far as economic calendar, there's a lot of events, and I like to take out and present to you things that are high impact. You can see they're all in red. And let's go day by day. So Monday, we have interest rate decisions from China. We have retail sales from New Zealand. And on Tuesday, we have manufacturing PMI from Germany. And then we have European Union numbers as well, and UK PMI numbers as well. And on Wednesday, it's a big day. You have important news, and that's interest rate decision from New Zealand, monetary policy statement, press conference. Okay, so this is important. That concerns New Zealand dollar, of course, and US before the Thursday before the Thanksgiving, we come with durable goods and gross domestic products and FOMC minutes. It's very, very important. And of Thursday, there's nothing as US markets closed. We have retail sales on Friday, and we have GDP from Switzerland. Okay, now in the big picture, before we go to individual markets, the big picture is still COVID in place, and there's a lot of pressure on Europe. Germany had the highest cases. I think it's 50,000 cases a day, the highest ever. Australia also has issues, of course, but we're talking about Europe. So Austria announced really tough measures as far as people that are not vaccinating, and I think they about to post a lockdown on the country. Some other European countries, there's a lot of issues there. People really trying to protest and so on. So the COVID is, especially in Europe, very high cases and a lot of issues there, a lot of panic, a little bit. And there were some highlights on Friday that because of that, some European markets really sold. So we have that. We have Thanksgiving weekend, and the oil is in focus. There's we'll be talking about the oil in a moment, but the idea is really the U.S. Is pushing OPEC again, and they're talking to China and Japan about releasing strategic reserves on oil. And I think that was a couple of days ago. And then Japan Prime Minister confirms that pretty much they ready if needed to release the reserves to curb the prices. So they're trying to use this option to push and to have a little bit of leverage on OPEC and trying to push OPEC to produce more oil. So that's going to be in focus this week for sure on the oil prices. So on that note, let's move to the trading platform, and then we'll go through a few instruments, and we actually do start with oil and take a look. This was a down week, a pretty strong selling on oil, and we came down in the past few weeks from the highs of around 85, and we closed the week at 75.65. And if you can take a look right below the previous level that were support, and take a look how, again, just want to bring it to your attention that levels are important. Some people actually don't believe in them. You don't need to believe, but you see the connection. This right here happened in 2018 in September, and the recent move high initially stopped over here, and the high here was 79.96, and the high here was 76.96, and the high here was 76.88, 8 cents difference, and we bounced and made a lower low from here. Okay, now we're back in this level here, below the level. So it's going to be crucial this week if we are holding below, let's say 77, and we have news, either OPEC increase in production or really this strategic reserves are being released, we might see continuation to the downside on oil. So we'll be watching the oil action this week, and just to illustrate how the stocks reacted to it, the major ones, the Chevron and ExxonMobil. Actually, I was wondering why they were holding on the oil going down, but I think they give in the last day of the week with the gap and lower. And ExxonMobil, it's even stronger fall. So oil has a lot of pressure there. And let's take a look at natural gas if we're already talking about energy commodities. Natural gas, it's a lot of publicity around it, and the global warming is affecting it, of course. And I just read an article that said, I think it was on, don't remember what the source was, but they were saying that global warming is affecting natural gas both ways. So one, they're trying to really get rid of coal energy and use natural gas to produce electricity. So at least for the next 10 years, natural gas will be in demand. So that's on the plus side. On the plus side, and on the negative side, they really want to try to get rid of natural gas as it is, as being used in warming up the households and so on. They're trying to really switch it more to electrical and so on, which is kind of funny. They're using natural gas to produce electricity, but then they want to switch natural gas with electricity to warm up the houses. So it's a little bit confusing, but let's see what happens. So technically speaking, on the natural gas, we had a big fall the week before, and this week we tried to bounce a little bit. We held around 473, and we're trading about 5. So this level 473 is holding. So at least we know the support is here. We could go higher, we could go lower, but it's not as obvious as the moves on crude oil. So that's as far as commodities in the energy sector. I would like to show you a few things on the soft commodities. So we'll start from coffee. Coffee, we spoke about it last week, and it did have a tremendous move a week after. The week just ended. And again, speaking of levels, take a look. we are trading at the level of 2012 January, and this is where we started to fall. See, we tried to go higher from the previous to retest the previous highs, but we failed. And this is the monthly chart. So take a look. For 3 months, we tried to break this level right here, and the last bar was January 2012, and the high here was 238.40. Okay. So again, speaking of levels, take a look what happened on the daily chart. This was Thursday. The high was 238.25, 15 cents short of that level. Then on Friday, we had the freight breakout, and we hit exactly the number a dollar high, 239.40, and then we closed below. So on coffee, after this huge vertical move up, we're confirming that level again. I'm going to show it from this level. We fell really, really quick and straight. Besides this correction here, went vertically down. So this move in the vertical parabolic move went strong and fast. So if we're not closing above it, which it looks like it, we might go or slide lower, maybe the previous levels. This was the one that we broke easily, but it is a kind of a strong level. As you could see, this huge move here ended at around 214, 215. So if we're not breaking higher, we might slide another $20 to retest it and then see what happens. So levels do make sense, um, but you don't need to believe it. So coffee might have a little bit of a correction upcoming week. As far as grains, if you take a look at wheat had a nice move the week before, but the week that ended, it's a flat week after a fake breakout. So it tells us there's a possibility of correction to the downside on the wheat. And soybeans didn't have a strong week at all. They're having a hard time leaving or detaching from this level 1262, 1263. It's really glued to this level. Corn, same thing. We couldn't break out of this range. And the wheat as well is facing this resistance here. So we might see a pullback in soft commodities, especially in wheat, as we refuse to sustain this less move to the upside. So that's as far as soft commodities. Let's take a look at gold. Gold is facing a strong resistance here, the high of the previous week. And the level here was 1868.81, so almost 1869. And on the daily chart, you could see as we had few attempts to break through it and we couldn't. So we're now on the way to possibly retest the 1833, 1834 area. We'll be seeing that. And of course, I think what caused it, fundamentally speaking, is the strong dollar. Now let's take a look at the dollar, and then you could see the connection. We spoke about the dollar that the moment we broke out of 94.57, we opened to the brand new area here on the weekly chart. Take a look. We pulled back from this level. We had 3 consecutive weeks trying to break through it. We couldn't. And after a small pullback, a very strong 2 weeks to the upside. And we actually closed toward the high of the week. This is the daily chart. We had a correction, a healthy correction after a high here on Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, we continued higher, but couldn't break the Wednesday high. So dollar index very strong. And again, fundamentally, it's important to mention the Federal Reserve and all the the chairs of, I don't know what's the correct thing, but all these the individual states, Fed bankers or central bankers, they are really talking a lot now about maybe bringing closer decision to increase the interest rate, and some really insisting on finishing this tapering sooner than they were planned, and some really say that it might need to be finished by March or April, which gives us a few months. And some of them actually saying that the Feds really need to start raising the interest rates before it's too late, and that actually created the upside pressure for a dollar, and it might continue in the upcoming weeks. So dollar is very, very strong. And let's take a look what individual or what the pairs are doing against the US dollar. USD CAD has, of course, more support, not just because of a strong dollar, but with the weak prices of oil, and Canadian dollars following that as a correlation, as we understand. So oil is a big chunk of production in Canada. So as you can take a look, USD CAD is approaching a very serious level here, and that's 126.50 area. That's where we really dropped from, and then a lot of actions happening here, including this tail from which we refused to go higher. We found support, and now we're retesting this 126.50 area. So if we do break out of it, it creates an opening for continuation up to 127, even 129. It could be higher. So USD CAD, very strategic point here at 126.50. We'll be watching this week. Australian dollar. I draw this trend line is breaking to the trend line, might continue to the downside. And of course, what I mentioned that especially after this global warming conference, they're trying to really reduce usage of coal. And as we know, that Australia is a big exporter of their product, and I think this is also putting a downside pressure to the Australian dollar. And if you look at the weekly chart, we are below the previous level of support around 0.7290. And besides the trend line, we actually might accelerate the selling to around 0.7 area. So Australian dollar, we'll be watching this week. CHF JPY, but before that, let's just follow up, be consistent. The US dollar, euro is really selling. It's been weak. And on the daily chart, take a look. We broke through 113 on Wednesday. Thursday, we had a little bit of hope of reversal, and then the big disappointment, and we actually broke below the Wednesday low, and we closed below 113. So euro dollar has no support here. It could continue sliding lower. It could find support around 111, 110, who knows. We're not going to speculate here, but it's a big or strong downside pressure here. USD JPY, also back to the strength. If you take a look on daily chart, this level 114 is really very strong magnet here. We tried to break through, and we did have some selling here, but then on the 10th of November, we came straight in one day. We actually covered the previous week of losses. That's very bullish. And then was continuation about the level. Then a sell-off on Wednesday. Thursday, pretty much neutral. Friday, a little bit of a sell-off, but we are holding this 114 level. So it's very, very serious level here. As you can see on the weekly chart, a lot of consolidation after move up. So technically, normally it's a classic scenario for continuation higher, and we'll be watching this week what's happening here. USD ZAR, very strong week. We might continue to the upside. And let's take a look at yen in general. CHF, JPY. Yen is also strong, as we spoke about it when the market is selling, which we'll get in a moment to the market. But when there's a risk of trading, the yen is becoming kind of a safe haven. That's what they call it. So this week we had some strength on the yen against other currencies. This is against euro, and could see even on the strong dollar, as we just mentioned, USD JPY, it didn't really have power. So yen is also strong. Pound, let's take a look at the pound. Euro GBP is selling. Pound is getting some strength. And one of the reasons, I think I mentioned last week, I'm not sure, but they expecting the next meeting, which is going to be December 16th, I believe, the Bank of England, possibly moving into increasing the rates, and that would be positive for the pound, of course. So pound is getting some strength, and let's see what happens this week. We held above 134 level, and it looks like that level becomes a support after a short few days below it. We are holding 134. So let's see how this week starts on the pound. So that's as far as currencies. And let's move to indices. Last week, and especially Friday, was a little bit mixed. So let's take a look. We'll start with Nikkei. Nikkei had a down week. If you look at the daily, we are we tried a few times. We tried to break 29,936 area. We couldn't, and the last few days there was selling. The Wednesday was a sell-off, and then flat 2 days after that. So that's as far as Asia. Nifty 50, we spoke about it. So this we established a strong resistance around 18,200, and we are ranging now. So the previous support held around here 17,664. We confirmed that. So far we didn't break through it, so we might be ranging for a while, or if we see some closing below 17,664, we could be open for continuation to the downside, and that would take us to possibly a next level of support around 17,300. But for that, we would need to see some closing below it. Or like I said, we could hold this level and try to really have some ranging trading here in the range. S&P 500, we had the move. This is a weekly chart. We had an up week, but we're having a hard time. We kind of stuck here. The high was 47.11, and that level was reached on the 5th of November, and then Friday we had the false breakout and closed lower the level. So at least we have a pointer here, 47.10, 47.11. That's a level of resistance, and this was the latest pullback, and the low here was 46.25. So it's about $90 range. Let's see what happens. As I said, Friday was a pullback, and we are in the range. Dow Jones had a strong sell-off, and I just checked. Boeing had a 12, almost $13 loss, and that actually affected Dow Jones. That alone, one stock affected or added to 82 points loss in Dow Jones. So out of 3 U.S. indices, Dow Jones is the weakest. You take a look. We are to retest this level. That was the previous resistance. Let's say 35,516. We closed at 35,570. 578. So let's see if we are holding this level, we might go retest the highs, but if we start closing lower, we might actually turn into a down move. Let's see what happens. And the strongest was actually the Nasdaq was very strong. It had a strong week, brand new highs, and that to do with the tech stocks, of course. That includes Nvidia, Apple, and Google. We'll look through them in a moment. So Nasdaq is strong, and the sky's the limit right here. But if it turns around, we would like to see the previous high here was 16,447 and a half. So if we pull back and sustain that level, that it might hold, and if we start closing lower, also it could tip over and continue lower. So we'll be watching indices this week, and I just want to go through European indices really quick. As we said, especially Friday on the COVID threats, there's a lot of down moves there, and then this is DAX. You could see it. We pretty much crossed the previous 3 days of trading, closed at the lows. Fringe index as well. CAC 40 was selling, and FTSE continuing going lower. And it's not just fundamentals, it's basically what I mentioned, that expectation of increasing rates is good for the pound, not so great for the index. So we do hold this level around 71.94, 71.95. We bounce from it. Let's take a look on the hourly chart. You could see how after this intense sell-off, we actually tried to bounce, and that's the next level to retest. That's the level from which we sold out back in September. And then from resistance, it turned into support, a lot of actions, a lot of accumulation. And the reason I'm saying it, just for you to understand what the levels are coming from. So there was a resistance, and we came, retested, remained a resistance until we moved higher and made the highs. And then it came and retesting it as a support. So as of now, it is a support around 71.94, 71.95. And if we see some price action closing below this level on the daily charts, we might continue lower. So out of all the indices, I think FTSE has the most pressure to the downside. So we'll be watching it. And it's also important to see who's the weakest, who's the strongest. So let's say if next week we have a strong week, then Nasdaq is the strongest. It might continue the strongest, and if they have a weak week, so the weakest one might continue first to the downside. So that's important just to see the relative strength, so to speak. So indices, we'll see if we'll continue to the downside the upcoming week. And let's take a look. One thing before I go to individual stocks, I just don't want to forget it. The Bitcoin, of course. A lot of things. We had a sell-off after recent, let's see the weekly chart. After recent all-time highs, we actually sold out last week. And the biggest reason for that, there were announcements from China and India. So India, I think, is banning any kind of cryptocurrencies following China. And I think China announced that not only transactions are banned, also mining is not allowed. So that what pushed Bitcoin lower, and Ethereum, and I think other coins as well. And on the flip side, there's a very famous, it's always on the news, Cathie Wood. She's a manager in one of the big funds, and she's saying, and I quote, that she's expecting by the institutional action that they will push the Bitcoin price to 500,000 by year 2026. So I don't know what it means. It could be tomorrow, it could be a day before the end of 2026. It's an interesting statement, and we'll see it. But as far as what's happening now, for the traders, it's important. Again, you need to understand some people don't really care. They're just holding it and say they don't pay attention to fluctuation. The traders that just like to make money, short terms, they just try to find a good levels to buy and sell and keep on doing the same thing. And after the pullback, they're buying it again. So here's what you see. This was the level we stopped around 55,500. And as you could see, the moment we got to this level, there's a buying action going on. And now we're in the range of around 4,000 here, between 55.5 and 59.5. So if we break out of 60, we might go higher. Let's see, but it's a lot of excitement, a lot of actions on Bitcoin. Okay, so let's move to individual stocks, and we start from Tesla. Tesla, with all the excitement and the selling of Musk and other insiders, the stock recovered nicely. That's what we spoke about last week when things settled. You could see the real value of the stock, a nice healthy price action. We went lower and then we slowly go and retest the high. So Tesla very strong. Boeing, as we said, that's what caused a big drop in Dow Jones. It's a big move in Boeing. There's some fundamental things, including the safety and so on. So there was a big reaction to it. Walmart, we had earnings, and like we said, after a strong recovery, we came right back, we covered the gap. So we'll be watching what Walmart will be doing. And of course, we're approaching Christmas, and Black Friday is the first to come. So I think the news will be showing. So far, we're holding this level. We kind of close the gap. Okay, this is one of the things that's happening in some cases, gap and go, and then we tipped over and went straight, and we closed the gap. As you could see, we formed a new level of support here around 142, between 141 and 142, and let's see what's happening there. Disney, after a gap, after the news, we remember we mentioned it, they missed the earnings, and the main reason is that subscribers are not really building up as expected. So the Disney Plus, and I draw this level 153.5, 153.45. This is the previous level of resistance, and we are stopping here. So it could be that in upcoming week we might see a little bit of a bounce in Disney, and this was a strong move down with the gap and go. And we're finding some kind of support around here between 153, 154. We'll be watching that. Facebook on the weekly, it was a positive week, but very small gain. We are fighting with this level here again, 343. Take a look from here. We bounced. We resisting again, and this level to watch. GE, after the announcement, there are a few companies, GE and a few others that we spoke about, that they announced they're breaking the company in three. And since that, the initial reaction was, we spoke about last week, initial reaction was positive, but then we're sliding lower. And there is a possibility that we'll find some kind of support around these levels. We're trading around 100. We might slip to test this level right here between 96, 97. We'll be watching it. Netflix, it looks like this level is staying as a resistance, the high of 690 approximately. And on Wednesday, we tried to break out of it. It was a nice move. We went almost hit 700, 699.5, and then we pulled in. And then Thursday and Friday was sold out. Friday we broke through the Thursday's low. Doesn't look so strong. So there's a possibility that we might slide another few dollars to retest 645, 650. That's what we came the last time to make new highs. So that's Netflix right there. Pfizer. Pfizer and Moderna just got approved by FDA for their booster for all the adults. And of course, the pill of Pfizer, they requested to get expedited approval from FDA for that pill. And just to remind you, they came up with the pill that 89% chance that people won't die and won't need hospitalization if they take it the first day or two of having symptoms. So that was a big booster there. And the price, of course, reacted. This was right here. And Friday, we sold a little bit. So let's see what happens. The Apple is the champion. I think it's one of the big reasons between Apple and Nvidia. Apple made a new high 160.40. We closed, and they pushed Nasdaq higher, as we mentioned earlier. So Apple is very strong. And one of the things that I read this week on Apple that really they have the buyback policy, giving back to the investors, and investors like it. So they just keep on pouring money, and the stock is going higher. Microsoft as well is very strong, where they gap up on Friday, and it's all-time highs. The only thing that we'll be watching this week, of course, what the markets are doing in general. We might pull back and try to retest the previous supports, and if that happens, that the 329, 330 level would be the one to test. We had a double bottom here before making new highs, so we confirm this level around 330. Let's put it that way. So if we're not breaking the highs and there's downside pressure on the markets, we might come in on Microsoft, and before anything else, we might go and retest these 330 levels here. Google didn't make the all-time highs as Apple did, and we are kind of forming this 3000 strategic resistance. Let's see what this upcoming week will bring. Amazon this was the level from which we sold, and we had a nice move on Friday, but we closed lower. So this 37.07 level, it kind of remains a resistance here, and we'll be watching the upcoming week. JP Morgan of the financials was the strong out of three. We spoke about it a few weeks back. We had Goldman Sachs, we had Citigroup, and we had JP Morgan was the strongest one, and we are seeing how there was a nice sell-off here from the all-time highs, and we are coming to some kind of support around here, around 160 area. And let's see what financials are showing this week. Okay, and a few more things, few small stocks that I want to show you. That not the small stocks, I'm talking about the price. So of course, after you see the stock with the 3000, this is small, but Twitter, Snapchat, we spoke about them, and we said that it could be a bounce, but it didn't happen. We broke through this support and we sold further. So just let's see what potentially could happen here. We could continue again about the relative strength. If the ups in the up market, the stocks are going lower, it shows really nobody wants it. So when the market turns around, we might see continuation to the downside. But over here, we're kind of approaching kind of a support around 47, 45 area. So we'll be watching Twitter, and the Snapchat as well is sold out. It didn't hold this level after a nice move. Actually, it was a very nice move. We spoke potential move higher. We did move higher, and then on Friday we broke lower here. And let's see if we continue, and if we do, this 47, 47 and a half area could be a support. And let's bring Alibaba, even though it's a hard stock to trade, and of course with all the China cracking down of all the internet companies, Alibaba didn't come up with good earnings, and there was a gap on Thursday and continuation. And the only thing, I know some of you are trading the stock, so after all this drop, we might find a support here, but it's very fragile, as we might bounce from here, or we might actually continue lower. So just I wanted to mention it. Okay, so let's just summarize. Let's summarize what we spoke about. We said that the COVID is still ruling, unfortunately, especially in Europe. Some countries are considering lockdown or some drastic measures. We have a Thanksgiving weekend coming up, and this week is going to be short in trading. Thursday is going to be closed. Friday, short session. And oil is in focus after the recent drops. We might hear some news either from OPEC or from China, Japan, or US about the releasing the strategic reserves on oil. And the markets, due to COVID and other things, the markets having pressure, especially European markets. It might continue in the upcoming weeks. And on the Thanksgiving week, as we said, that statistically we might have an up week. Let's see if that stands this week. So I wish everyone, of course, I want to thank everyone for attending, and I want to wish everyone an amazing, productive, and happy week. And enjoy the rest of the weekend. Get some energy. Stay healthy and happy. All the best. We'll see you next week.